There are some things you should really know if you're gonna play League Classic. The map and its systems are pretty different to anything in the last 10 years or so. There are no Grubs or Rift Heralds in Top River, no Elder Dragon, no stacking Dragon buff, and instead Dragon gives gold to each player on the team that kills it. Speaking of which, we're back to using Hunter's Machete, so no stacking a jungle pet item. There's something way better to stack instead. Small jungle camps spawn every 50 seconds, allowing junglers to primarily farm the jungle and match or surpass laners in gold income and experience. Most champions are way simpler with fewer skill shots, and others who were reworked are now entirely different, like Skarner or Sion. Some champs have crazy AP versions of themselves available to build, like AP Master Yi. Gold gain was a bit slower back then, with modern sources of gold like Turret First Blood or Platings not existing, and so your builds will progress slower and games will usually be a lot longer. There is less team-wide snowballing since there are fewer objective buffs like aforementioned Drakes and Grubs, but arguably more individual agency through gold on your champion, leading to longer games, but ones that feel more like you can carry them if you're doing well. At the same time, with more targeted abilities and longer hard CCs, countering strong individuals isn't anywhere near impossible either when coordinating abilities together with your team. Snowbally champions like Katarina can go absolutely crazy when allowed, but are not hard to shut down through an organized, balanced team composition. There were also a lot of removed summoner spells that we now have access to, bringing back something like Revive, Teleport, Karthus. There were a bunch of changes that never happened, like the change from cooldown reduction to ability haste. Ability haste has no cap, and roughly 10 ability haste allows you to cast 10% more abilities. However, 10% cooldown reduction shaved off 10% of your ability's total cooldown, but you could not go above 40% total cooldown reduction from any sources. For reference, 100 ability haste is equivalent to 50% cooldown reduction. Mana potions are back. You're gonna run out of mana if you use abilities as often as players do today, so mana regeneration, mana items, potions, and runes will be needed if you want to use them often. Speaking of which, runes are back to raw stats that you can fully customize. You can purchase them with IP, influence points, that you get by playing the game. Masteries are the old version of today's runes, a skill tree providing various bonuses focused on offense, defense, or utility. These can be pretty important for each role, especially support. You'll end up starved for gold trying to build full AP on support in League Classic, especially if you try to keep up with your responsibility to purchase wards and Oracle's Elixir to detect enemy wards. Instead, supports were usually champions with high utility that functioned well without gold, and could gain extra gold income from gold gaining items like Heart of Gold, Philosopher's Stone, and Lucky Pick, as well as gold from runes and masteries. They would also buy Sightstone to gain wards for free, like your evolved support items of today, as well as cheap aura items to help their team. Mid lane was where all the mages and assassins went, ADCs, usually not mages, went to bot lane, junglers were mostly fighters and tanks, but some spice could be worked in, and top lane was where everyone else went, but again, usually fighters and tanks. That's all you need to get by, but if you want a bit more detail on the roles and workings of League Classic, and a better idea of how to play it, stick around for a while for the rest of my guide on how to play League Classic. What we're going to do is go lane by lane to talk in much more detail on how you can play your roles, what champs can go there, general recommendations on items, runes, masteries, and playstyles, and not just give you one idea on how to play, but also give you the tools to build your own playstyles. But before that, let's talk about those strange runes and masteries. When you start in League Classic, you will not have access to them, and instead Riot will give you default mastery pages based on your pick, and your rune pages will have default values before you buy any to start filling them in. Purchased runes will be an improvement, but at least you won't be starting from zero like we did back then. Play your first few games without paying them too much mind. You can probably figure out masteries once you get the general idea down. At the bottom of each mastery tree is a keystone that provides high value. To reach this, you need to invest 21 points into that skill tree. And so that is usually what most players will do, speccing 21 points into their chosen tree, and then 9 in another. For example, a typical fighter may enjoy a 21-9-0 mastery page like this, getting mostly offense with some defense. We'll talk about specific mastery pages per role a bit more later. You'll probably not want to mess up spending your first runes, and so it's nice to have a page that can be used on multiple champs. Since every champion does basic attacks, AD is typically more universal than AP. As a jungle main, I like attack speed marks generically across all champions, but you can also go for AD. Seals are great for defense, and so health or armor works great here, but armor is better against most opponents except APs, and is way better in the jungle. Glyphs are magic focused, and you can never go wrong with magic resistance. Even better though, since most roles don't fight magic damage much early on other than mid lane, magic resistance per level glyphs are universally very good, and break even with their flat counterparts quite quickly. Finally, quintessences have a lot of unique options. You could opt for AD again as it's quite universal, but as a jungle player, I like movement speed quintessences. Every champion in every role likes movement speed, so you can't really go wrong with it. Here is a good starter rune page that I used back in the day to save on IP. I'd recommend you get a secondary rune page for support, that again we'll talk about in a bit more detail later on, and when you want to personalize your rune pages to tailor to your roles or champions, you can feel free. But enough of the base systems, let's talk about the game and go role by role. You can skip to your specific chosen role, but I'd say it helps to get a good overview of all of them. It also gives me watch time. Starting with mid. Mid lane was about wave and map control, with two of the best champions being heavy roamers, Kassadin and Twisted Fate, with many more powerful champions like Katarina and AP Master Yi being viable of course. Pushing waves and roaming to bot was strong, as always, but some assassins could try and control their opponents as well. When Talon and Zed are released in Classic eventually, a champion like Kassadin will be a little less ubiquitous in League Classic. Itemization for mid-mages isn't as clear-cut as it has been recently. Mana is a much more real concern, so items like Rod of Ages, Tear of the Goddess and Mana Potions were good ideas when you needed more of it. For high AP and burst, look towards Rabadon's Deathcap, Zhonya's Hourglass, and Deathfire Grasp. For defensive AP, look towards Rod of Ages, Abyssal Scepter or Shisei's Mana Jug versus magic damage, and Seeker's Arm Guard against physical damage. For AD mid laners, though there aren't many at current with no Talon, Zed or Urgot, Tear is your mana item of choice going into Mirror Mana later. Brutalizer on its own is an amazing item and often isn't upgraded into Ghostblade due to not needing the crit or attack speed, but Black Cleaver can be a fine buy. Instead though, Ravenous Hydra for large AD, sustain and wave clear is a powerful choice, and Bloodthirster for up to 100 AD can really ramp up your damage. Last Whisper and Void Staff as your percentage penetration items however are non-negotiable. With old style runes and masteries, everyone will have fair amounts of armor and magic resistance, and both items are brilliant for their costs. For mid lane masteries, most of the time you'll be going for damage, either AD or AP masteries going down to 21. AP champions might enjoy 2 points in Butcher to help last hit minions, but AD champions don't really need that. If you're playing a hybrid champion like Kayle, you can also opt for both AD and AP. For your remaining 9 points, 9 into the defense tree will help you scrap against your opponent with sustain, specific resistances, and health. There is also a case to be made for the utility tree, what with its mana regeneration, mana, and utility, and it can also help specific builds like ones that use Seraph's Embrace or Mirror Mana. But I think Runic Affinity is a very strong mastery for mages. But at very least on the PvE games I've played, donating blue buff to the mid laner is not common yet like it was back then, so defense is always safer. Most runes work, with magic penetration marks for mages and ability power quintessences providing your damage. Armor seals can never go wrong and are very good against AD mid laners, but since the most powerful AD champion isn't in League Classic yet, if you want to optimize against enemy AP champions as a mid laner, health seals may be even better. Similarly, flash magic resistance glyphs are more optimal for the early game than the generically good magic resistance per level glyphs I recommended earlier. But glyphs can also provide you flat or scaling ability power instead if you want to go full offense. For AD mid laners, AD marks and quints or armor penetration marks will do you well, with the same recommendations on your defensive seals and glyphs. Cooldown reduction is an option as well if you'd rather focus on utility. Just remember, Classic has a cooldown reduction max of 40%. As an ADC, you mostly rely on farming CS early and letting your support make the plays. ADCs do a lot of damage in the late game, but they are not nearly as proactive as ADCs today. Itemization will be mostly deciding between a crit build focused around Phantom Dancer and Infinity Edge on a champion like Tristana, or using a on-hit build around Blade of the Ruined King, and if you're Cogmore, Runan's Hurricane. Rageblade does not double your on-hits, and is instead an item for hybrid champions like Kayle and Jax. ADC masteries will almost always be 21-9-0, but champions like Ezreal or others building Tear of the Goddess may spec for 21-0-9 to get the extra mana. Runes will be fine with attack damage marks and quints, but you can also go attack speed marks depending on your champion. Full attack damage when playing a champion like Tristana who gets a lot of attack speed on her Q, for example, is a great pairing. There are other runes like Critical Strike Chance and Critical Strike Damage. They're rarely used and usually for memes. If you want to get lucky sometimes, throw in one Critical Strike Chance mark. Supports are traditionally low-cost champions that can use utility regardless of item build, allowing them to spend their gold on wards, pink wards, Oracle's Elixir, Sightstone, and cheap utility and aura items like Shirelia's Reverie, Runic Bulwark, and Soul Shroud. They can fund these purchases through gold generation runes, masteries, and items like Philosopher's Stone, Heart of Gold, and Lucky Pick. Support champions were usually enchanters like Soraka, Janna, and Sona, and tank champions like Leona, Tarek, and Blitzcrank, all able to function with very little gold. The enchanters' utility spells didn't scale with AP like today. Janna's shield, for example, just straight up provided 50 AD while it persisted. There were no heal and shield power items yet. Enchanters did scale damage, shields, and heals with AP, but it was usually too expensive to consider. Masteries will usually be 9021 or 0921 due to the need for the gold masteries in the utility tree. Additionally, the various cooldown reductions, mana regeneration, and Explorer's Ward are all very useful to the support playstyle. Runes were typically also armor seals for the enemy ADC, magic resistance per level glyphs, and gold quintessences to increase income. Marks as flat attack damage helped with auto attack poke, but true support pages used to go for armor marks, which weren't amazing value, but were a very good way to get even more defense. If you're very greedy, you can skip the armor seals and get gold seals instead, but you'll be very vulnerable when caught. You can combine gold seals with armor marks to alleviate that weakness somewhat, but it isn't going to be as safe as defensive alternatives. Similarly, you can combine armor marks with health seals to get more versatile defense. And a final note on support. If you really hate the idea of being a utility warding support, technically players back then did sometimes pick mages like Nidalee and build ability power. This was often very frowned upon and could get your team to hate you fast, and probably won't be as generically effective as a real support. If you're gonna do this, I'd recommend still getting gold runes and masteries, and at very least, purchase Lucky Shadow for gold gain, maybe Philosopher's Stone as well as it gives you mana regeneration, and do purchase wards or Sightstone during the game, and then go on your happy mage support ways. Top lane may seem like a bit more of an island than in Modern League due to the lack of top river objectives, but since dragons, though very good, are not as direct a win condition as Dragon Soul in Modern League, don't rule out getting ganked in top lane. Champions in top were often melee fighters who don't fit into the other roles like Gangplank, Tryndamere, and Jax, with some ranged picks like Kayle and Teemo finding their home here as well. Teleport is in a full power state, and so teleporting to lane or to teamfights is really strong. Since top lane has a lot of variety, runes and masteries will be tailored to your champion. 21 in offense or defense, depending on being a fighter, marksman or tank, is pretty typical. It can be very scrappy even if you just want to farm as Nasus, so I highly recommend using the defense tree, even if it's just the 9 points. Runes will also be for your champion, but being prepared for an AD or AP matchup with both armor and magic resistance runes is a good idea. AD can never go wrong in either marks or quintessences, but as usual, specialize as you desire. Eventually, having multiple rune pages for different matchups tailored for your main can be a long-term progression goal for you, and will give you an edge in combat. It's never amazingly overpoweredly decisive though, so don't worry about rushing to that point. Finally, we have the jungle, which will be the most different compared to live. First of all, jungle monsters got hands. You will purchase Hunter's Machete and 5 health potions on most champions, and you need to drink the potions. We do not have the same sustain as jungle items today, unless you play the true OG junglers, Warwick and Fiddlesticks. The other important starting info is your first clear path. You can get away with most clear paths with some effort and a bit of a struggle, but a lot of junglers decide their first camp from their mana usage. Mana-intensive junglers like Fiddlesticks and Amumu will want to start blue buff. Karthus jungle was a meme back then, but you can imagine he needed blue buff as well. Less mana-reliant junglers or entirely manaless junglers like Lee Sin can start red buff if they so choose. One more note is to be very aware when your opposing jungler is Shaco, who would often plan his own path by trying to kill you in your own jungle, or Nunu, who is exceptional at counter jungling. More on that in a bit. Jungle monsters have their Season 4 properties, with a rapid respawn time of 50 seconds for the regular camps. You can clear from one side to another, or skip camps your champion is weak at taking, like using any single target champion, skipping the rave camp, and instead prioritizing a fast gank. For clearing, if you go from one side to another, the first camp you took will have already respawned. Unless you're planning to gank after, this would cause a long walk back to that first camp to keep clearing, or even a recall. But if instead of a line, you choose to skip the third camp, you can create a more efficient, looping path, going golems, wraiths, skipping wolves, white, then wolves, skipping wraiths, golems, then wraiths, and so on. You can farm infinitely. With the fast respawning camps, permanently farming your jungle can match or sometimes surpass the income of your laners farming minions, and there is a particular item that loves this farming strategy. That takes us on to jungle items. Hunter's Machete is the universal jungle starting item, granting you some on-hit damage, making attack speed marks a great rune purchase for general junglers. This can upgrade into either Masteries Razors or Spirit Stone, providing either a 25% chance to deal 300 magic damage to jungle monsters on basic attacks, and granting you increased flat health and mana regeneration. The simple rundown is that basic attacking champions like Master Yi and Warwick will prefer Masteries Razors, and most ability focused champions will prefer Spirit Stone, but your choices can be further informed by the final jungle item upgrade. First, Spirit Stone can upgrade into the AD item, Spirit of the Elder Lizard, the AP item, Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, or the tank item, Spirit of the Ancient Golem. This is the easiest way to know which jungle item to go on your champion, but they do also have powerful passives that can inform your build path. Elder Lizard has a true damage burn on any damage you deal, Spectral Wraith has extra spell vamp, and Ancient Golem has tenacity. They all have good stats as well, and I cannot stress enough that you should always try and finish your jungle item, usually as fast as possible. The Butcher passive and Sustain are incredibly useful for your jungle clear, and I've seen so many junglers sit on Razors, Spirit Stone, and even some just stay on Hunter's Machete before focusing on other items, absolutely kneecapping their jungle speed. If you're playing around this, then you can make it work, but it's generally not recommended. Jungle clear speed is even more important with the final jungle item, Wriggle's Lantern, upgrading from Madred's Razors. Speaking of bad jungle item builds, I've also seen many players upgrade Madred's Razors into Madred's Blood Razors. Please don't do that, again, unless you're planning around it. You'll clear so much faster with Wriggle's Lantern. Wriggles provides more bonus damage to jungle monsters, its own ward passive, and when you clear 30 jungle camps total, it upgrades into Feral Flare. Feral Flare grants an on-hit bonus magic damage scaling infinitely with the number of jungle camps you've taken, and applies it to all targets, not just jungle monsters anymore. It is very powerful on basic attacking champions like Master Yi, and anyone looking to clear the jungle constantly as their main strategy, so long as they actually do basic attacks. So don't build it on, like, Carthus. The downside of Feral Flare is that it needs to be farmed, not only be acquired, but scaled. This means you're particularly weak to not just counter jungling, but also the opposing jungler simply impacting the game more than you with good ganks. Alongside how basic attacking champions are easier to counterplay in teamfights, this is why Feral Flare wasn't really seen at the pro level, and even back then, Master Yi players like Calcep were building Spirit of the Elder Lizard instead. And just a quick aside on that, Classic's version of Yi doesn't have AD ratios like he did in Season 4, so Feral Flare is probably still the way to go on him. But it's still a very strong item in the right hands, and not a meme item by any means. Keep your jungle warded and adapt to when things don't go according to plan, and you'll still get great results with it, even when enemies try to counter you. Speaking of which, there's some jungle mechanics and a nice item trick that can help you to know. For one, unlike Modern League, jungle monsters don't automatically despawn when their lead monster is killed, so when you counter jungle your opponent, leave one small monster alive to further delay their jungle respawn timers. And for the build trick, you do have a choice between Madred's Razors and Spirit Stone, but there is a third choice, and that's to have both. By sinking an extra 700 gold into a second jungle item, you acquire the Madstone technology, providing a percentage increase to your damage dealt by Madred's Razors, plus the Spirit Stone sustain. This allows you to clear the jungle incredibly quickly and sustainably, and was often used with Feral Flare to get a crazy amount of stacks and gold. You can also use this and upgrade into a Spirit Stone item instead. This was incredible on champions that just wanted to farm lots of gold, or champions that really wanted level 6 like Skarner and Evelynn, at the additional cost of 700 gold and further telegraphing your playstyle. I highly recommend doing this if you want to farm your feral flare or rely on jungle clearing instead of ganking. But it's not just for optimizing play, and is also a great tool for off-meta. Madstone allows anyone to clear the jungle sustainably and quickly, so when you feel a bit silly with, say, jungle blitzcrank, but still want to farm the jungle, consider picking up Madstone. I used to jungle Thresh with this tech to decent effect, and when Thresh gets added, I'll do it again. You can also have multiple jungle items, like having both Ancient Golem and Feral Flare, but just bear in mind that the Butcher passives of the Spirit Stone items, as named passives, do not stack with each other. Jungle Masteries are as varied as the jungle champion pool and will depend on your goals for the champ, but there are some notable masteries you might want to pick up no matter what. Tough Skin and Bladed Armor help squishier champions stay healthy in the jungle and help with clear speeds. Bladed Armor's Fawn-like effect is also AoE, can help single target jungle clearers out a bit as well. On the other hand, we have the Utility Trees mastery, Runic Affinity, giving a 20% increase to the duration of your blue and red buffs. This means 20% longer mana sustain for clearing, and 20% longer red buff slows for stronger ganking. If you're going 21 into offense, you can only choose one of them, but which one you choose depends on what your champion can get away with. On Skarner, I like 2109 since his sustain with W, E and potions is good enough, but on Evelynn, she's much squishier with no real health sustain or shields, so I go 9 into defense to help survive. Remember, you're not just surviving the jungle monsters, but also being more ready for potential invaders. Of course, if you're going 21 into defense, then this choice is a little bit easier, and same case if you wanted to go 21 into utility. Jungle runes, as with my initial recommendations at the beginning of the video, work well with armor seals for the jungle monsters, magic resistance per level glyphs since you shouldn't be facing magic damage until later, attack speed marks to use your on-hit machete damage, and movement speed quintessences to get around the map, whether that's farming or ganking, faster. Going for more attack speed on quints is good too, and flat attack damage on more ability focused junglers can help them a bit better as well. Similarly, AP junglers may prefer ability power glyphs and quintessences, with the unique option of taking spell vamp quintessences if they so desire. Karthus, for example, would benefit greatly from this. And a final note on jungle items. They're pretty good outside of the jungle. Spectral Wraith was a cheap and powerful source of spell vamp and regen, and was great on some mid laners. Ancient Golem, though least popular outside of the jungle, was an alternative source of tenacity, and most powerful was Spirit of the Elder Lizard, both for memes and for being part of one of the most powerful off-meta builds in history, Blue Ezreal. That was so good, it stopped being off-meta very quickly, and basically all Ezreal builds today are still using the same playstyle as Blue Ez. It might seem crazy saying that today, but player responses to Blue Ezreal at the time saw a jungle item on an ADC, a slow stacking tier item, and a tank item in Iceborne Gauntlet. The whole build seemed like a low damage troll build, but the build just wouldn't die, easily escaping with E whenever a threat approached, and slowing them with Iceborne Gauntlet, dealing damage through Moa Mana and Elder Lizard's true damage. And with that noted, take a look around the item list and let me know what items or build ideas you're interested in trying, or even just interested in seeing. I'd also be happy to try them out myself, so feel free to let me know. That's about it to get you ready to start doing decently in Classic. I know I'd love to say you're going to be on your own from now. I'll also be continuing to upload Classic related videos and guides, so comment below if there are any champions or things you'd like to hear more about. But first, I have to rant about the glory that is pre-rework Skarner in my next Classic guide video. If you want to help out, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and ring the bell to hear when that video comes out. And if you can't wait for it, I also have videos about some of the champions from before their reworks, including a version of Twisted Fate even older and more broken than his classic version. I hope you'll check them out. So now, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have plenty of fun in League Classic. Shoutouts to the members War Squid, Ultimate Ground, my dad, Gentleman Zeta, Lunar Eagle 1996, 53rd Alabama Booty Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mr. Noodle, Pike OnlyFans, Tierman Caranthal, Dario Castro, Overseer, N. Luca, Luna Arc, Cposh, Senior Scrim, AJG Beats 91, Sir Gaming Brain SGB, Lexivix, Boomborn, Yokogunza, Logan James, Young 06771, Gingerbread Dude, Patricio Garita, Yompe, Torgan, Zanata Wright, BBB Archmage, Jacob Mack, K-Rock, Mr. Hunkill, Ozco, Valengeist473, John Rigo Galicio, King Leaf, Starstrike, Francisco Delicio, Twist, and Axelix. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel.